Welcome to RCS. I'm Nick.
I'm Dan.
I'm Dave.
Thanks.
I'm going to warn our audience now. There are going to be two Putnams on this issue of RCS, so it might be tough to tell them apart. So
We'll try and do our best.
yeah, that's Dan 1.
Yeah. So
How are you, Dan?
good, man. Not as good as you.
Oh yeah, I found a
I'm going
monkey.
to tell everybody why. Yeah. Okay.
I found a monkey. Yeah. And I'm really excited, and I
always think that the audience or like people out there who are just tuning in are like, why does Nick have a monkey? That's illegal.
I have a feeling, but this is another thing. I don't think it's a hard stretch. Like if I just put out there, Nick bought a monkey, people would be like, yeah, I could see that. Like, he's in the category of dumb people like Paris Hilton and things like that. I'd buy a monkey. No, I bought a Honda Monkey 125, and I go down and just look at it because it's raining, and I'm like, I can't go out on riding. But and I have thought about putting it up in my apartment, but I've realized it's not as easy to do, and there's some nosy neighbors. But yeah, I'm really excited.
If it wasn't for the elevator, you'd be fine.
Well, yeah. So I kept thinking like the elevator door is going to open. There's going to be some little lady there. And I'm just going to be like holding a motorcycle, like, hey, okay, have a nice day now. Big gulps, huh? So,
Yeah, they'll be like, oh, I'll get the next one.
yeah, I just feel like somebody's be like, I saw a man in the. I think that would be the thing is like them going down the office. I saw a guy in the elevator with a motorcycle. Right. So I'm really excited. The mods have already started. They haven't. Nothing's come in yet, but. I'm so excited.
It's not a slippery slope. It's more like a cliff with that bike.
It really is. And then I've got to go. I took it a long time. I think looking back, I don't think I actually took a course last time. I just read the book and then took the test on the motorcycle test. So this week I've got to go.
You can still do that.
Yeah, I don't want to. I was realizing this. I was talking to Shauna. I haven't looked at a driver's safety book of like since I was 15. So it's been a few years. So I've got to refresh my memory of what the signs mean, and there's a few laws I'm not sure. Like we were riding this weekend, and I was like, can we ride next to each other? And you're like, it has to be staggered.
Yeah,
So,
technically staggered, but yeah.
Also, I don't have the skill to do it, but I really wish I could film the way you ride a monkey down the street, and it's.
I like warming up my tires.
It's like watching a toddler in a bouncy house. So, Sean and I are back there like just trying to stay in our lane. You're just bouncing around. So, yeah, I'm really happy. I'm really happy. So, yeah.
I'm excited to see what you do with it. Watching David mod his and Brandon mod his, I'm excited to see the monkey community oddly exploding around here. I take credit for that.
Rain City Monkeys?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's going to be a good summer. I think I'm going to save a lot of money on gas. So there'll be that when it's not raining.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well,
I'm good. Happy.
One of those mods that I know you're going to do because it's fun to do is exhaust.
Yeah. That's not, I think that's what people understand is that you buy the bike, but then like mod wise, like what I want to do is already added up to like half the price of the bike. Like it's
super easy to do with that.
And some parts are really cheap. Like doing the gear reduction in the front is like $8, but like exhaust is $500 to $800. Suspension, which I have to do because I bottom it out by sitting on it, is another $500 to $800. It's just it adds up quick.
Real quick on that.
So. But.
Yeah, I figured I would do our Carter Subaru tip of the week about exhaust, or a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the difference between resonators and mufflers because there is a difference.
They're
and
spelled differently.
Correct.
Yep.
That is a start.
Yep.
So the resonator, let's start with that because it explains the muffler. Muffler quiets your exhaust. It helps tune the exhaust. But a resonator is simply designed to tune the sound. It is the specific purpose of a resonator is sound. So you can get legal requirements with the muffler. By the way, it is illegal to modify your exhaust system, for the record. We'll get into that in a little bit.
But a muffler also creates back pressure for the engine, too.
Yeah, but that's sort of a modern myth now that you need a certain amount of back pressure. You can actually tune a motor to do straight pipe all the way out, and it's fine. You just have to tune for it.
That's my point, yeah.
Yeah, but a resonator is specifically designed to make the engine sound good. And so you can change the way, like a lot of guys will go aftermarket exhaust and even add a resonator, often in place of their catalytic converter if they're doing a really heavy tune.
You don't need one of
which
those.
is illegal, so don't do that. Not that I've ever done that.
How do you wink through a podcast? Don't do that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But anyway, that's the difference there is that a muffler is also, it's not specifically the difference, but most of the time, like 99% of the time, a muffler is multi-chamber and a resonator is simply changing the inside or internal diameter and has different packing. So a different length, like a slight decrease in diameter with more packing is going to be a quieter resonator. But specifically when you buy an aftermarket exhaust, with an aftermarket muffler, it may also include a resonator to make it sound the way they want. So if you've heard that car go by you at 60 miles an hour on the freeway, that sounds like it's at like 9,000 RPMs.
Yeah.
So every Civic from the 90s you've ever seen, that's a car without a resonator and a crappy exhaust.
You remember going into like Shuck's Auto Part and getting the Cherry Bomb?
Oh, yeah. Who did? Yeah, Cherry Bomb glass packs.
Yeah. God, yeah, those are great.
Yeah, and glass packs, resonators, not mufflers. So they called them sort of interchangeably back then, but the specific difference is that one is specifically made for sound.
Yeah, and law-wise, you're really not supposed to change your muffler, but...
Not technically.
No, then you got all these people running around with Scions with big fart cans on the back of their car. But yeah, so yeah.
Remember those HKS super draggers?
Yes.
And the funny thing is dragger meant like drag strip, but they all just drug on the ground because they were that giant stainless can that weighed probably 50 pounds more than the stock exhaust.
It really helped.
Yeah, big time.
But yeah, I think you just cut it off right at the headers and just call it a day. You get to see the flames too. That's the fun part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dump it out the side. Right?
Yeah, if it's not shooting flames straight up out the hood, from the turbo, that's just more efficient.
Yeah.
Those 7-second GTRs.
Speaking of that, did you hear the SRT's gone? They're
Yes.
going to get rid of it now, which I don't know how that's going to go. That's interesting. That's a big part of Dodge and Chrysler, and I don't know. I mean,
What are the rednecks going to do?
Well, but they make a lot of money off it. Like, I think they still hold the record for like the least amount of time from somebody picked up a car to totaled the car. It's like a quarter of a mile or something like that. So
that doesn't surprise me at all.
I was excited because they just put a Hellcat engine in one of the Chrysler minivans, and I really kind of wanted to see what that would do. So,
I kept thinking about that. It's funny you bring that up before we move on. AMG made that minivan, 600 horsepower. They made like less than 30 of them, I want to say. But that hot rod minivan does exist from the factory. Yeah. And Mercedes, of all people, actually did it.
There's a few people out there that took Honda Odysseys and put like the spoon engines in them. And
yeah, I've seen that.
Like 1,000 horsepower minivans. I was like, yeah, it's great if you live on a straight street and you want to get your kid to school real fast. But other than that, it's rather obnoxious.
An oddly easy engine to tune because it was that 3.2 V6 that was in the TL and the NSX.
And there's a lot of room under that hood.
Yeah, so you could fit a Jackson Racing supercharger relatively easy into the V6 out of a Honda Odyssey.
Maybe we need a minivan. Or a booger barge, as it's called. So, yeah.
I can hook you up.
Yeah. That's a different type of van, but, more of a prison van. But no.
Should we reintroduce our guest?
Well, you should.
Again?
You should, probably. Yeah.
So I've known this guest the longest. Ever since I ruined his motorcycle experience when I was born.
You ruined his motorcycle?
Oh, yeah, we'll get into that.
Okay.
So the guest today is my brother, David Putnam, retired WSP. Retired being the key word, no longer representative of this crappy state.
As of today, right?
As of today.
Yeah. He's got his little card and everything. Yeah.
Yep.
Part of the AARP. And,
Yep.
Okay. So, yeah.
That actually, acronym still works.
Yeah.
It does.
Retired police.
Nice. Welcome.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
We've been excited about this for a long time. Like,
yes.
Since we started the show, we were talking about, like, as soon as he retires, we're going to have him on. As soon as he retires. So... Yeah.
Yeah, we strategically waited for this. So little do people know that if you are an officer, you are a representative. You can go on a show or whatever, but you are acting as a representative. So that means you have to be extremely filtered and tactful, and you can't say bad things about our terrible governor or the way this crappy state is run, or its
even when you're not on
force.
even when you're not on duty.
Yeah, even when you're not on duty, and so we can talk about all the fun things. But we'll talk about the fun stuff, because there is a lot of fun stories that I have been able to listen to over the years. We've worked together. We've driven cars together and motorcycles.
I think I inspired Dan's car.
Yes,
obsession.
Absolutely.
So
I have him
born into it.
He's never done anything with it, so
yeah.
And I think we have him to thank for the fact that I got pulled over on my birthday 2 years ago on 5/22. So there's that.
Your idea.
I've never had an idea come back and bite me in the ass that hard. So yeah, that was good. But at least I got a good new trooper that didn't know the difference between a Cobra and a Subaru. So I was good. So yeah. But yeah. So Dan, go ahead. I'll let you start the questioning because I know you've been waiting.
Oh man, we should start with some fun stories.
Where did you grow up?
Yeah.
Well, so like I say, we started this story. Dan started around a motor. I was promised a motorcycle. Instead, I got a little brother that was a surprise, and so the motorcycle was delayed, and then it turned out to be a more expensive hospital bill than mom and dad were anticipating. So I got the news broken to me that meant I wasn't getting a motorcycle, but, look at this little brother that I did not want, it's like, no, I don't want it anymore. I want that motorcycle.
This is way louder and more annoying.
Yes. And little did I know that was going to be my future was, an omen for my future is children messing up my car plans. But we can get into that later. But, fortunately, though, my parents did find a way to get me my Honda 50. It was a couple months later, but so I was okay with the little brother at that point.
You didn't try to sell him for the motorcycle?
No, resale market on that. He was kind of, he was kind of cool. He starts to move a little bit. Then I was big into models, and I loved Legos. So I would build cars.
I don't
out of
understand
Legos.
people like that.
Yeah, those weird guys.
Yeah.
Then I knew it was bad when I'd come home from school, and I'd start to go to my room, and he would run for my mom and grab onto her leg, and I'm like, "What did you do?" Because he had played with my models, which meant the wheels were broken off, the Legos were now disassembled, and I had to reassemble them. So I guess maybe I actually got into engineering. I was redoing model cars to re-gluing, reassembling Legos to attempt to survive a 2-year-old that learned to climb. After my dad made me shelves to get higher and higher, but he learned to climb higher and higher. So
it's not a good picture he's painting of you, Dan.
No, it's worked out.
But he knows how to fix things now.
He does.
So that's good. Yeah.
So I said I was waiting for the time he had a kid. But I have brought my children over to. He just doesn't have any toys for them to really destroy. So
I don't.
At least, I guess you let them sit in the Porsche.
Yeah.
But they didn't do any damage.
I think Andrew drove it. Did Andrew or Alex drove it? Andrew, I think, drove the Porsche. Which one?
Wasn't your Porsche sitting in his driveway when your rotors came apart?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yeah. I blame my wife.
Okay.
I drove that before that. So
That's fair. That's fair.
So,
he got his revenge long term.
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
He's worked out. It's worked out over time. Although that Honda 50, I left for the military, and he decided he was going to rebuild it.
Oh no.
Well, actually, we should pause. That Honda 50 got its revenge on him because I had built.
Is this why you have a new knee or whatever? Yeah. Okay.
When I built jumps and stuff for it. So it's a week of high school graduation, and he's out in the rain jumping it. I think.
Yeah, I'm just messing around. It's the 50. I'm way too big for it at this point. So it's just something to play around with.
I was 7 years older, so I think I was 17, and you must have been 10. You go over a jump, break your leg, and is in a cast for my mom's at. I think mom was at the hospital with you, or is it graduating from high school? I think because you were cast. I don't remember exactly, but the Honda 50 got its revenge on
yes,
Dan.
It did.
So
wow,
but
yeah,
not a good picture, Dan.
Yeah, none of the cool bikes I had. It was the Honda 50 that did in my leg.
Yeah,
you shouldn't have been riding it. You're too big for it.
Probably.
Is that why you went out and bought a monkey?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
There's some nostalgia there.
Yeah.
It looks remarkably similar, but yeah. Then he took the Honda 50 apart to rebuild it, and it left in boxes. My dad finally cleaned out the garage, and
I had a guy supposed to rebuild it. He got fired, and so it stayed in boxes. Yeah.
Oh, you had a guy.
Motorcycle dealership.
I see.
At the time.
Oh,
yeah.
that's
yeah,
right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
So
you guys grew up north,
Arlington.
Right? Arlington. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you parted ways when you graduated from high school and went into the military.
Right.
And could not get farther away from Mr. Putnam. I mean,
right.
We all get that.
Yeah. That's fair.
And then so give us a little bit of your life path here.
So,
what do you want to be when you grow up?
I'm still working on that. I'm on phase 2 now.
Yeah.
I joined I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I went off and visited colleges, and it was living in a dorm and all that didn't sound like fun. That was in Gulf War I. So we deployed troops, and I signed up and joined the Air Force, headed off to basic training that winter '91. I was ended up after the war going to Saudi Arabia for just a temporary duty assignment, and got to sign my name to a couple 2,000-pound bombs attached to F-117s, but that was about the most fun I had over there.
Okay.
Other than I knew I never wanted to. The Middle East was not a fun place to be, and not a nice place at all. The place I didn't want to visit again. But I was in New Mexico. Then I ended up in Korea for a year.
What were you doing for the Air Force?
I was in law enforcement.
Signing bonds. Oh, okay.
I was a MP basically for.
Got it.
After Korea, came back and was stationed in Sacramento at a base that's now closed, and I met a buddy there who had a 914, and so that was a lot of fun. We autocrossed that car, So when I got out, I came back up here and I was driving by and I saw a 914 at a dealership and bought it, and then spent about 6 months in my garage realizing that, oops, 914s have rust issues and other issues and things like that. So it went down to the metal, and I got bead blasted and rebuilt it all the way up. So I was going to community college, and Dan actually, I think we're in 8th grade, I think.
Yeah, 7th grade, I think.
7th grade, and he went I got him to go to the college with me and taking computer classes.
Yeah.
And he was into computers. And
Too bad that never paid off either.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
it's a dead end.
He and I went to class at 7 a.m. doing our computer classes there at the
basic DOS, basic programming and stuff like that. It was fun, though.
Yeah, it was fun. And then we working on the 914, and that was a lot of fun.
So you had come out of the military and then moved back up here?
Yeah, I moved back with my parents and bunked back in again. And the 914 in the garage was the rebuild project.
Yeah.
But then I met a girl and
ruined everything.
Yeah. So, well, that didn't ruin everything. What came after that? So, no, they didn't. But
Exactly. Don't get us killed. She's not here. But
yeah. No, she's not here. But no,
I heard she's a lovely woman, but
she is.
Yeah.
She is. She didn't ruin it all. But
yeah.
I joined the patrol and was stationed down in Raymond, South Bend area. So we patrolled Pacific and Wahkiakum counties.
I got pulled over down there once.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah. Got let go. They knew David.
Were you like, look at my last name? Look
No,
at
he recognized me.
Oh,
and
that's not
he's
good.
like, he's like, your brother David? Because he was looking at me, and I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
He came down in his red 944. He's probably about the only red Porsche in the entire county there.
No, this is in my Z06. This is only like 3
I didn't
years
hear
ago.
about this one.
Yeah, I was just driving through, and I was actually, it had changed from 65 to 55, and I just didn't notice it. Like, I wasn't actually like speeding, having a good time. I literally was just doing like 66, and I passed him going the other way, and he pulled me over, and I was like, I'm barely moving. What am I doing? I was like, great, no front plate, and he's really bored.
Cops don't do that.
County.
Yeah.
It is pretty boring. So
yeah, and he was like, just slow it down. He's like, it's 55 right here. I was like, I was like, I totally didn't notice, honestly. He's like, you're good. Have a good one. Like, okay.
Do you know you look like a guy? Works here?
You tend to work there a lot. It's a great place to work. Not such a great place to live. Little bit out of the way. So
yeah,
we moved back up to Marysville, and I worked the East Beat, Highway 2, 522, Highway 9. Up to Stevens Pass for 3 years, and I got a job in January of 2003 to be on the governor's security detail for Governor Locke, and moved down to Olympia, and that's where I've been ever since.
Yeah.
So, but
and you like I said, you retired as of this morning. And what was your position as of retirement?
I was a lieutenant in our Field Operations Bureau, so our headquarters.
Okay.
But yeah, I went from the governor. I was in the governor's detail for 12 years. Through Locke, Gregoire, and Inslee, first couple of years, and then I went to our HR division and did backgrounds, in charge of our background section, and then promoted to a lieutenant position, and I managed the South region, part of the South region, for a few months before I moved back up to Olympia into the headquarters position. So
wow,
but yeah,
thank you for your service. I appreciate it. And not only in the Army and in this, I mean,
Yeah.
So. I don't usually like to get this close to police officers, but whatever.
Not anymore. You're good.
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
Good.
We're good. Yeah, we're good. Yeah. So
turned it in now. The ticket book turned it in this afternoon, so you're fine. You're
good.
We're good.
But I think I still got my login though.
We're good. We're good.
A sector ticket.
You know too much. Yeah.
So
Here comes that tint and plate ticket. All right. Let's take our first break. We'll be right back with some fun stuff.
Grandpa, what do you call this thing again?
It's a 66 Ford Bronco.
I think you got ripped off.
Why is that, honey?
It's got no Wi-Fi, no USB port, no Bluetooth.
Exactly. I guess we'll just have to talk.
Sometimes the best way to connect is to disconnect.
Is that the window button?
It's called a window crank.
Cool. The faster I move it, the faster it goes down.
This moment of escape was created by Haggerty
Being old is kind of cool, Grandpa.
Works for me.
for people who love cars.
And we're back. That was fun.
Here we are.
Yeah.
So over the break, we were kind of talked to the audience and trying to figure out some questions, because we all have those questions. Like, I kid you not, there was the stigma growing up in Spokane. I knew a couple of officers, and nobody ever told me it was true that you could go 7 miles over the speed limit without being pulled over. That was where they would start to pull you over. Like, and it's stupid, but it's like, it's just like when I got pulled over Moses Lake and the guy came up to the window and looked at me and goes, "Do you know why I'm here?" And it threw me off so much. I was like, vacation?
You like my beard?
Exactly. But you were saying, like, I'm sure there are so many stupid things you've heard, mostly from drunk people on the side of the road.
Yes, drunk people are universally impaired is the right word.
So intellectual. Yeah, exactly. How many of you had 6? There's 4 on the floor, 1 in your hand. Yeah.
Well, the question you always hate is how much you had to drink tonight? It was always 2 beers. So it was always, you'd switch your language with a little bit of time of, besides the 2 beers, how much have you had to drink? So I remember one gentleman, really actually very nice, but he was a language barrier, and he's a Hispanic gentleman, and he says, "Uno cerveza," and I'm like, I hold up my hands, like this, like about 18 inches apart. And I said, "Uno cerveza," and he just grinned and laughed. But he was really compliant and nice.
One
nice
swimming
guy.
pool.
He knew he was wrong. He actually went in the next morning and tried to plead guilty and felt bad about it. And but it was, if I recall the judge saying, no, you need to get a lawyer and everything. But good
no,
guy.
I did it. Yeah.
But yeah, he knew he did it. And so, I mean, that's, you had mentioned, I think one of the questions was, what's the fastest you've ever let off? And I think it's the guy who, I remember a couple, I used to work down in 101 along the coast. And that's notoriously slow if you're coming up from Long Beach. Stuck behind some RV going, 20 miles an hour, and the awesome curves that are, it's a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit, and even at 50, you can really enjoy those curves. So I remember 2 motorcyclists that I don't recall. They weren't going really fast, but it was pretty fast, and they pulled right over. As cars going by, they're honking and yelling out the window, and so I said, "Hey, looks like you guys passed a few folks on the way up here," and they just kind of grinned. And I said, "Well, we're going to sit here for like 10 minutes because if I let you," I said, "I appreciate you pulling right over." Clearly, I said, I'm guessing you probably didn't exceed the speed limit based on the RVs I seen by. So, but I'll let you off with a warning, but you're going to have to sit here until all those cars pass by you. And I suggest you take Highway 4 out the long way instead of don't try to pass them again going up 101. So they went the other way, but I let them off. And it's the people who are honest. I mean, honestly, our motto is to gain compliance the least amount of enforcement necessary.
Okay.
And so, if you stop somebody who's not a jerk and who's you think is going to be compliant, then, you're ideally, you use your discretion, or we try to say everybody has their officer discretion to use the least amount of enforcement in their toolbox to hopefully gain compliance over the long term. And we have one of the tools I was responsible for is everybody writes you a ticket. It's all electronic and it used to be, press hard 5 copies. Now it's all electronic, and that electronic database then keeps a record. So now if somebody stops you, pulls out your driver's license and scans that driver's license, they're going to see that Nick got stopped, last week, and Nick got stopped last year, and Nick got stopped 6 months ago. Well, Nick might get a ticket this time, regardless of what Nick was doing, because Nick clearly isn't complying. So, so that we try to, we try to work on that system on the backside of it, so that you're not just, you don't want to stop the person who made that one mistake, but you do want to, you're trying to get compliance with someone who's a habitual offender and not someone who just, got going a little too fast.
The motorcycle story brings me, I remember when I was a kid, I was younger, I was probably 19 or 20. We came over from Spokane to Seattle for hot import nights, and there were about 6 cars, and we were speeding and doing stupid, and we get pulled over, and the cop was super nice. And we were nice to him. He's like, he pulled us all over, and he's like, "I think you guys have been speeding." We're like, "Well, I mean, we don't know." And like a parade of people going by honking and flipping us off and calling us names. And he's like, "You don't think you passed anybody?" And I was like, "Well, maybe a couple of people." So yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
So if you pulled right over, you're probably...
Well, we did, yeah. I was, so.
You probably got off.
Apparently he'd been hearing about us for a while, so it was just about finding us.
Yeah.
So.
I'm thinking back, I actually never got pulled over directly on a motorcycle. I have been caught up with and talked to, but I have never been pulled over. Like, I've been like, "Yeah, you passed me back there like 20 minutes ago." "Oh, really?"
That wasn't me.
Yeah, I'm like, "Who?"
Yeah.
But that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny. What's the you used to do investigation as well, and I think that's kind of an interesting topic to bring up, accident investigation.
Yeah, so we have a program where it's technical collision reconstruction program, so you kind of dissect what happened in a crash.
Yeah.
and try to find, especially when you had we didn't be involved if it was ever a officer involved, collision, fatal, or serious injury, debilitating injury. I enjoyed the math side of it and putting it all back together again, and the dynamics of we'd study crush and how fast things were going based on how much crush was in the vehicle and things like that, skid marks on the road. So that was a lot. That was really interesting. I enjoyed that immensely. Yeah, we had you get to see some pretty gruesome. We were actually just talking to one of the guys I worked with, and one of the worst, right out Highway 2, an elderly lady, which we don't really ever know why she crossed the center line, but she clipped a 24-year-old teacher and clipped the back side of her car, and that caused her car to rotate into the car directly behind the lady in this Jeep Cherokee, and she got T-boned by the car behind her right at 55 miles an hour. And it ended up, it looked like an archway. It was resting, it rolled, and it was resting on its side, driver's side up, and just the big arch of the crush you could see. I remember going around to this little Honda. I remember going around to look inside there, and I was standing on the road trying to reach inside to see if she, I was there within a few minutes of it happening before anybody got there. And I remember stepping in what I thought was transmission fluid, and she had been literally almost decapitated. It was blood. And I just remember thinking that was the most, that was the most sad, one of the most sad. There was others, but that was the one you wanted to really figure out why, because then she continued on, hit another car head on and killed that lady, and she died in that collision as well. And we don't know why she crossed the center line, but we spent, you'd reconstruct that as to what happened, and you go back, where was she at that day, her family, and, interviewing what could have caused that collision. Because ultimately you want to know, we now incorporate this into using Power BI, Microsoft Power BI database to try to figure out, how to correlate these things. So then you, like your ticket, where could possibly be a problem for that weekend, and what possibly could bring people that were showing off with their cars.
Citizen input, asking for an officer.
We say, hey, I call up and say, hey, you might want to assign more officers in this particular area because we have this thing coming up. Look, incorporate that tool. So we do this action. Why do people die? What's causing this? We did Harborview worked with us to learn about. We got to do a study about child deaths and dynamics of collisions and things like that, and car seat safety. And so it was an interesting. I love that research part of it. But yeah, we had a lot of we were just talking about that yesterday with one of the detective who was the lead detective on that scene. But just how it was right at dusk. You don't forget those.
No. There's the other side of that too. I'll lighten this back around because there's a fun story we were talking about before we started the show about an accident investigation you did about hitting a quote log.
Oh yes, yeah. My car. How a beaver totals your car. First you start out with a Grand Caravan or Dodge Caravan. Okay. And there were
too many options there.
We looked around I worked down in Pacific County, and it's right along 101 runs right along the Columbia River, and it was this dark, stormy. The waves would break over the rocks there, and this got called to a collision scene, and this car had the rear spring shackle had gotten bent and had jammed the wheel up into the wheel well. It had done a 360 and crashed into these rocks, and the waves were crashing over this car, and these people were. It's dark, horrible night, so we got them out of there, and I needed to find this log. They think they hit a log. I said, let's find I'm going to get the log out of the way so the next car doesn't hit it. And I look back, I'm walking back in there, and I see this beaver. It's a huge beaver. And if you're going to be on the Columbia River, you got to be a big animal to take that waves. And beaver's probably 3 or 4 feet long. I remember grabbing it by the tail and trying to drag this thing off the road because it, sort of somebody else hits it. But that was. That Pacific County was great for. I did a car bear, which bears are really mad after they got hit.
Doesn't necessarily kill them. Yeah.
Really mad.
Yeah. I've almost hit one on one of our rallies. Yes.
We had a car cougar. Fortunately, the cougar was killed, and so it wasn't mad and looking.
Oh, not an actual cougar, not an older woman. Got it. Okay.
Yes.
Fair.
But you had all sorts of animals. That's actually the largest concentration of black bears in the state is in the Long Beach Peninsula, and they're very. We'd call them pigs with fur because they became very domesticated because people would leave out their cat food and whatnot, and people
or their cats.
Yeah. Well, but actually, we only had one. We had one this bear, we got a call to this house, and the bear is underneath the deck, and the lady had cat food all over her deck. It's a single wide trailer, so it goes down from there.
I can hear the banjos now.
The little bear, this black bear, he's probably only over 100 pounds. He's under the deck. He's got his head hidden, dug like into the corner. He's crying. He's got his paws over his head, and he's just this poor little bear. I mean, he just wants food, so he goes and hides in the deck, and so we just we're pepper spraying him and trying to get him. You want to get them.
You want them afraid of people.
Afraid of people, so they don't come back and hurt somebody or get killed. And we went and trapped him with we go to the bakery and get their stale donuts. But the donuts fill up this bear trap.
That would work
donuts.
for me. Yeah.
And the bear goes in there, grabs the donuts.
We got 2 off-duty officers and a bear.
And
there's a donut conversion here. Yeah. So.
This bear was so tame. We brought him down, my wife down there, because he goes, "You got to come see this bear," because it would sit there and would pucker up its lips at the edge, and the wildlife. State troopers are ex officio wildlife officers, so we tend.
That was going to be my question. Why are bears your problem?
There's very few wildlife officers, and so they're dispatched through our dispatch, and so if we have a wildlife call, there's likely we would back. I mean, I'll remind me of the story, but this bear, I bring my wife down there, and they're literally sticking marshmallows through the cage, and he would pucker his lips and take the marshmallow and not even empty his teeth. So somebody had been so we took that bear. That bear got a ride way out into the Cascade Mountains and dropped off. And so hopefully he did better, in the wild. I'm not sure if he adapted to the wildlife, but he's not an aggressive bear, so he wanted to keep that bear, safe. And so he went way out into the wilds of the Cascades. He had a 2-day drive out into the mountains before he got dropped off.
We are living in the state that has the infamous bear story about going through the cooler and only drinking Rainier beer. So, there's that.
Bears are we had one of my other favorite calls. We had got a call of a bear in someone's house. And this older lady, this grandma, had brought her child down to Ocean Park and to open their beach cabin, and she had started a giant pot of beans on the stove. It's like June or July. It's a warm day, and left the door open, shut the screen door, and had gone off to town to get some more food. And so she comes back to town, arms loaded with groceries, opens the door, walks in, and there is a black bear on her counter eating the soup. Eating what's going to be stew. So she drops the bag, screams, runs out, and shuts the door behind her. So we get the call. This bear, who's now freaked out, is running around and around the house, destroying the house. And so
somebody opened the door.
Yeah. So we opened the door, and she's like, "Just shoot the bear." We're like, "No, this is the bear's habitat. Shut your door. You can't leave your garbage can out." So it was about educating people that
we're not making bear stew here.
We're not going to hurt the bears. You live in the bear's home. You have to take precautions to take yours. And the bears they weren't aggressive, and that one was not aggressive. It ran off into the woods, and we didn't get another call about it. But so
that's really funny.
But yeah, we went to elk and a lot of animals there.
Being card oriented that we are, what's the fastest somebody's been?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
I know there's an infamous story of a guy that went across 520, and the only reason they figured out how fast he was going because they timed it. They didn't have somebody to catch up to him.
It was an M6, wasn't it?
It was an M6, and then there's those 3 famous cars that got pulled over down in Tacoma a couple weeks ago. Like we were laughing. It's like, who won the race? The guy that was in 4th and didn't get caught. So
the fastest?
Yeah.
We had a car once. I recall we were driving down. I'd booked a drunk in jail up in the North Pacific, in the north end of the county. Was driving back to the south end of county, and I noticed a car just coming up really fast behind me on this long stretch, and I had another trooper in front of me. So I sped up, and this guy's coming, just pull over and check his speed. I think he was like 127, and he was drunk. So another drunk, and took him
2
back
for
to
1.
jail.
Yeah, okay.
So, but he stops. He goes, "I thought you might be a police cop because when you sped up, you started speeding up, and people don't normally do that." Like, well, maybe you should have slowed down and not drink. So, but he went back up to jail too.
I mean, how many of us have been driving and looking in our rearview and going, "Are those Crown Vic lights behind me? Are those Explorer lights?" Yeah.
I used to have that down to an art. Now it's all Explorers, and so I just look for the tailpipes. But now the new ones don't have that.
Yeah, but if you can see tailpipes, they're already behind you or past
Well, no, when you're coming up on one,
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, everybody does that.
Yeah.
You just like, is that maybe? Like, I don't speed in town anyway.
Used to be easy when they would just say XMT on the plates, but then they got all like crafty and they start to WSP. Yeah,
that's funny. Let's just talk about the cars you've driven, because you've had some interesting ones, and one of the ones that made me laugh the most was probably the Civic.
Oh yeah, when I was when we were in executive protection, we had cars assigned to the principals. And then we were looking for little cars that were fuel efficient, plus, kind of.
This is protection.
Undercover. Okay. And so what happened to be on bid was Honda Civic hybrids. And so there were like 3 left. It was the end of the year. There's the way the state works. I mean, you got to spend the money by June 30th. So it's like, well, let's get the Honda Civics. And it worked. And they were, you could park them anywhere. They were, typically only 1 or 2 people in the car with us. And so as you work one person goes ahead to make sure that everything's secure as to where you're going. And so that advanced car, we had those little Honda Civics. So I had a Honda Civic I had 2. I had one I kept in HR too. I had because I was a background investigator, led the background unit. And so I wasn't stopping cars. So I did stop a car in the Honda Civic, but that guy, wasn't sure. It was, he wasn't real sure about that. It took a while for him to stop, but yeah, it was actually for its purpose. It was a great little car. So
another myth that when people are pulled over and cars are confiscated, does the Washington State Patrol use those cars?
Sometimes. So if it's like if you have a civil asset forfeiture, so if the car was used basically for the gain of drugs, or some other illicit activity, it can be. Typically no, though, because contrary to popular belief, drug dealers don't really put a lot of time or money into their cars. So they're pretty, you're just going to end up with more problems than it's worth. So a lot of those cars.
Here's my meth car.
Yeah. So they will go to an auction, but civil asset forfeiture is not actually something that's done a lot. So
Dan knows this story. When I was in Spokane, I was working at a place we were tinting cars, and a woman came in and she had bought a Mustang from the Washington State Patrol, Spokane Police Department, from the auction, and we were putting a sound system in it, and we popped open the side panel, and there was some contraband that they had missed somehow, and so that was a fun call. Like, no, it's not our drugs. No, it's not her drugs either. Well, you need to come get them.
Yeah, we don't want these.
We don't want these. I'm sure street value we could probably buy a few more cars, but yeah. So
yeah. Well, that goes to like the recent Supreme Court decision of the possession, knowing possession, which is kind of it's not my pants. I remember I arrested a guy.
Somebody my pants.
I arrested. Yeah.
A horrible story. Yeah.
I arrested a guy, and he's in. He just a normal stop, and he had a warrant for his arrest, so that he got out and cuffed, and so you search them before you put in your car, and he had these big muck boots on, and so we not knowing what's down there. We took the boot off, and out falls a rock of crack, and I'm like, oh, and he's like, that's not my boots, and I'm like. It's like a 1/4-inch rock, and it's jagged. You can't tell me that you didn't feel that in your foot?
Yeah.
And sure, it's not your boots. So we do some more, and you don't stick your hand in some place you can't see. So you pull the pocket out, and out falls another rock of crack. And I'm like, these aren't my pants. And I'm like, I said, okay, before we go any farther, which clothes are you wearing that aren't yours? And, why are you not wearing your clothes?
Think about where all these rocks that you don't own are.
Yeah. It's like, sure, they're not your pants. They're not your boots. But the Supreme Court logic, I would strongly disagree with. If you believe that, I've got a bridge to sell you. So, it's a motion-front property,
Arizona,
near the Mexican border. So, anyway.
We have a lot of stupid criminals. Hence the criminals.
Right. And we, I don't think the court's opinion seemed to deal with, you're not dealing with the rocket scientist here who didn't know that that was there. It's a pretty, in the reality of life, it's pretty clear cut.
I was cleaning the bathroom. A meth lab just happened.
Yeah.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah. You have 4 pounds of amphetamine pills. Yeah, didn't know they were here.
Only 4? What? 4, huh?
Oh, yeah. So it's a little frustrating there. But
I remember when I was driving up from Oregon, I had picked up my black Z06, and I had passed. I was just going up there, and I see this car pulled over on the road with bullet holes in the side of it, and like 10 cops. And those bullet holes didn't look fresh. They looked like they had been there before, but they were pulling out cubes of things from the back of the car and putting them on the roof. I was like, that guy's going to have a bad day when he gets out of jail. if he gets out of jail. So that was an expensive bust for whoever that was.
But then again, you don't really go to jail that long for crimes these days, so it's not a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you don't call them crimes, they're no longer.
Oh, that's right.
How you get
yeah.
crime to fall in Seattle. You just don't arrest people.
Yeah, that was the police officer's fault. That otherwise he would not have been carrying that. If the police officer hadn't caught him, he wouldn't have been doing anything wrong.
I wasn't transporting drugs. I was just carrying them. Yeah.
So
he wasn't transporting them until he was caught.
Yeah. Yeah. Summer of love, people. Summer of love. So.
Yeah. Speaking of stupid laws, you actually, I remember very specifically, I'm very proud of this, is that you worked to change a law, and we're going to go into, I want to move it up a little bit into the family life.
Okay, well, we'll go back to the 914.
Yeah, let's go back to the 914.
Let's go back to the 914.
Yeah.
Because that's, so my wife, we got married right after I graduated the academy, and there's nothing to do in Raymond. So we had my son was born about 14 months later. And we had 2 kids, and my 2 sons, Alex and Andrew. And my kids loved the 914, and it was, going somewhere with Dad. But once you have 2, when you only got 2 seats, it's really hard to, you can't really. I figured, well, maybe I could put a 3rd seatbelt in that middle hump there, that little soft armrest, but that didn't work out. So the 914 had to go away, and I put that money into my Porsche fund after I sold the 914, which I should have kept that. I think the 914 market has appreciated far faster than that money ever would have. Yeah. But that was probably, I think my youngest was 2. When I finally decided that I wasn't going to be able to keep the Porsche. But shortly after that, we moved down to Olympia. And about that time, my wife decided that, she really needed a little girl and really needed another one. It had been about 3 years. My youngest was almost 3 years old, and she really needed a little girl because they were really cute. And so my mom had been a social worker since the 60s, and Amy's grandparents had been foster parents, and so I decided that was a great way that she could get her baby fix, I could keep building my Porsche fund, and I didn't have any more expenses.
Or did that not work out?
Yeah, that did not work out. But yeah, so we got
this story escalates quickly.
It does. It does. We got a little girl in 2006, and she did not like me at all. She was 20 months old. And she was pretty bonded to her father, she he was a meth cook, but he knew what to do. He just knew he couldn't be that. But she had very dysfunctional. The mom did not function in the way that a mom should for her, and so she loved my wife. But about day 4, I think it was 3 or 4, I went in to get her out of her crib, and from her nap. And she lifted her arms up to me and says, Daddy. And my plan for my Porsche fund went wonderfully wrong from there. And so here I am, 37 kids later. We've adopted 6 that we got to keep. 5 of them are all siblings and are partial siblings.
Youngest 5. Yeah.
My youngest 5 are all half siblings. And yeah, the Porsche fund is long gone. It turned into a full-size van and a minivan. So not Porsche at all, but it's been good. I wouldn't change that for anything. So
yeah.
But
you guys fostered 37 children.
37, yeah.
And you kept 6 of them they're all related.
Five youngest 5 related.
5 youngest 5 are related.
Cool
yeah.
Story. Yeah. Okay.
So they're all. We got my son. We had the first year, we got a little boy who was methamphetamine affected. And a methamphetamine child is a stimulant. So if you think back to the 90s and the fin craze, you took a stimulant because it's appetite suppressant. So when you're in utero and the mother takes the stimulant, that baby, that appetite, it dulls it. So when a baby's born, they're very quiet. They don't cry. They don't try to suck. They don't have a suck reflex. And a lot of them have a lot of digestive issues on top of that. And so if they go home, they tend to, child, 6 pounds, if you don't get any fluid or you don't get any weight, you don't get any nutrition quickly because the baby's not crying, the moms are typically then a methamphetamine cycle. You get really high, you're super hyper, you're you're very hyper, then you crash and you're asleep for 10, 12 hours. They can go into just a coma, and that baby then, baby needs food every 3 or so, and so they don't get fed, and they may not even want to get fed. And so their core body temperature goes down. They lose tons of weight very rapidly. If they don't die, they they'll end up in the ER. And so we would get these babies and get them through. My wife kind of trial by fire learned how to how to swaddle them, how to get them to eat and to feed them. And so we had 13 newborns in 14 months, because a lot of times, or it wasn't that many. It was a lot. And we had a newborn. Sometimes we had 2. They were all drug affected. In addition, the chemicals they use to make methamphetamine are very caustic. And so as they would discharge this poison from their bodies, that would literally eat their skin away. And so they'd be bleeding. They would bleed. And so you had to keep them, clean and dry, and, had to keep them uncovered, because otherwise anything touching their skin would burn their skin. And it was a lot of work, but we got very good at it. And so we got called on a little boy who was severely drug affected, and he had methamphetamine and heroin. And heroin is the opioids. The withdrawals are they tremor and shake. So when you think of drug withdrawals and you see something in the movies or the street, it's that tremor and that shaking and the sweating and all that stuff. And so now picture that on a 5-pound baby. And so they go to a great place. It's available here, called the Pediatric Interim Care Center in Kent. And they're given oral morphine to keep their tremors at bay. They give them just enough to keep the tremor at bay, and then they slowly reduce that morphine level over weeks until they're withdrawn. And this little boy was there, and he was probably one of the most severe drug-affected children. And so we were like, we should get him, because we were at that point really the experts. And so that little boy turned 13 just a few weeks ago, but he's an awesome kid and great kid. We were just on a video chat, and he fixed the toilet because the flapper broke. So he's being the dad of the house before I get home. Anyway, we got a call then 14 months later, right? Yeah. Matthew's mom had a baby. It's a girl, so we went to the hospital and picked up another one and got a call. Amy had just had surgery, and so we had not done Christmas shopping, or we were way behind. It was a boy, and I remember calling her, and she's like, "Oh no, crap!" She's like, "We got it." So we get ready. How am I going to do Christmas? And we ended up in the hospital, and they finally let us go the day before Christmas. Got to bring him home, and then we got another Addie, my daughter, who's 8, and then another one, my son Luke, who's 6. And it was just, out of the blue, surprise babies. It's a boy, it's a girl, and go pick them up at the hospital and get them through whatever withdrawals they had. But I mean, in the meantime, we had many others. We had one that was kidnapped by its non-custodial parent and out of Louisiana. So we had Kim for like 3 or 4 days till the dad got up there and picked him up. And a little girl, the only good one was a little girl. We got called up like 10 o'clock at night with Lacey PD, and we found this little girl on the street. Can't find her mom. No reported missing children. So we took her home, and she was pretty happy, and got her to bed, and everything. And next morning, got a call, and it turned out Grandma had been babysitting, and this mom lived with her brother, and who was upstairs playing video games, and Grandma had been babysitting. Little girl fell asleep on the couch. She was 2, and Grandma decided to go to the grocery store. Then went to the casino. And so the mom worked, and so she came home at I think it was about midnight, And she worked a swing shift job, and where's the baby? Goes upstairs to her brother, and he's like, with grandma. It's like, well, they're not down there. And so called mom, and mom's at the slot machine at Red Wind Casino, and says, well, she's asleep on the couch. And so anyway, the same police officer responded, so no, she's fine. But it's good because like if you have kids and your kids go out to play somewhere, they don't want to leave. They want to have fun. And so the next morning we said, hey, we found your mom. We're gonna take you home. And she's like, no. And then my daughter and she and they were
giant playroom.
They were playing princesses and all dressed up. And she was it's like you knew that was a functioning. Someone that was a good home that she needed to go back to. It was just an accident. And
thank God. Yeah.
Grandma was barred from babysitting, I think. So. But that was about the only good one. The rest, drugs are bad, guys. We all know that.
Okay.
But drugs destroy lives, and drugs leave a lot of destruction in their wake. I
wanted to talk to you about specifically the law you changed as a result of that, sort of that battle.
There was a little girl called Sarita. There's 2 laws I worked on, and Sarita was she was taken away, placed from her mom, and I think she was about a little less than 2, and put in a foster home. She was thriving, doing well, and about 6 years of age, the state moved to terminate her parental rights, the mom's parental rights. And at that point, the mom then finally identified the father who had been absent, or they knew who the father was, but he had been absent this entire time and not engaging. And when he learned his rights were going to be terminated, he decided, well, I want this child. I don't want, and that's a big thing. The state's telling you, you're a bad parent. We're going to take away your right to this child.
But now I want it. Yeah.
But now I want this. So she had been with this foster dad for 4 years and was well bonded and she had been through a lot of trauma, a lot of physical trauma beforehand. And so she had some behaviors that were challenging. You hurt a baby for a year and a half, almost 2 years old. That does a lot of, it breaks. There's so much brain development that happens in utero, and then those first, as they bond or don't bond, as they're newborns, she had some behaviors that were challenging, but they were working through it. And so there wasn't anything wrong with that father-family placement, per se, but, there wasn't, you don't care about your kid for basically 6 years, then all of a sudden you want your child. So they sent her back to live with him and her now stepmom, and her stepmom murdered her, beat her to death. I don't recall how many months later, but so I met him when he was lobbying because, at the time, foster parents had no right to speak in court.
Oh, the foster parent was lobbying.
The foster parent was lobbying, and had no right to speak in court and couldn't. None of that evidence could be considered. Basically, it was: is this a fit parent? Is it not a fit parent? You couldn't look at the whole picture and say. Every situation's unique. You can't. There's not a cut and dry. It's a life. You can't. It's not a car. It's not something mechanical. And so that law, Sarita's law, was passed in 2007, 2008, I think it was. But that kind of. And then when we my son Matthew, he was adopted. My 13-year-old. We adopted him. He was only 5 months old, the youngest ever adopted child in the state of Washington. It usually can take years to go through an adoption. But then his sister was born. We got his sister, and his dad was her father. Her mother was not the same mom, was not engaged, not at all in the picture, and didn't want placement. And but the dad's family did, and we said, well, we're family too. We have her brother. And the law, though, does not look at once you adopt a child, that child, the birth certificate changes, and it looks legally like it's your child, like it was born to you. And so legally, they weren't related anymore. So legally, her biological brother had no standing in court. And so we had to I worked through a bill that would, give him their biological standing. And in Senator, the legislators, it was like, well, that doesn't even make sense. Of course they're related. They're from the same mom. And we said, well, legally they're not related. And so the court can't consider that this other family placement. Because children have, Dan and I will be siblings long after our parents are gone. And so that relationship, that sibling relationship endures, is the longest lasting relationship that you typically have in your lifetime. And so, I mean, it was a logical argument, but it's amazing the amount of steps you have to go through, and people you got to talk to and convince that this is actually something that makes sense. But it was a neat process to go through, and it certainly served us, as when we had 3 more come right after that. So
yeah,
but
which would have been a lot harder with those last 3 probably, to go through this time and time again.
Yeah, and it was, say, each situation's unique as far as the parental involvement goes, and whether they even want placement. But that's a sad.
Yeah,
it's not a good,
whole other topic.
Just look at the happy side of all the children you've saved. So yeah.
Well, I mean, they're not. I don't really feel like it's saved. I mean, you give them a chance, but it's up to them to make. We told it's up to him to make the right choices with the hand he's been dealt. And one of the Barb Dremen, the director of PIC, she put it as on the nature versus nurture. Nature is the hand you're dealt, and nurture is you teaching that child how to play that hand. I mean, because sometimes there's unique things about all of us. I mean, even as Dan and I's DNA profile is very similar, but we have unique strengths and weaknesses that are different from each other. And I think we were parented. That was part of the, like, hey, I parented you, Dave, this way, and Dan, that's not working. And I think my mom would share the frustration with
the little one's broken.
The little one's broken, yeah. But I mean, we have different strengths and weaknesses, and so you have to. That's one of the neatest things about adoption is your own child. You feel like they got some of the same hang-ups you do, and you're like, if I could only figure that out for myself. I teach my kid how to get over that hang-up, but when they're not biologically yours, they are different, and so some of the struggles that they might be going through, you're like, oh, it's no big deal. I can do that. I can tell you. I can show you how to. You can work through this, and because you've been able to figure that out for yourself. But yet your own child, I mean, I have this with my biological kids that are a lot like, don't you hate it when I do that? Because don't do that anymore. But my other, I mean, Matthew doesn't have some of those similar. It's really neat. I mean, I highly recommend adoption. It's been an awesome journey. So
yeah. All right, let's take our next break, and we'll be right back.
We spend an average of 8 hours and 41 minutes a day facing screens. Laptops, smartphones, tablets, even digital refrigerators. But what are we really connected to? Isn't it time you connected to something greater? Sometimes the best way to connect is to disconnect. This moment of escape was created by Hagerty for people who love cars.
Okay, so over the break we were talking about, well, everybody's kind of grilling you, and I think this is a good topic because it's something I notice outside of Ellensburg, because I think that's where a lot of the emphasis is the air patrols, basically. And from the common citizen, there's marks on the road, and the airplane is measuring the time it takes you to go from mark to mark, correct?
We used to be able to do that, so now we have a new tool. It's basically the same thing you'd find on the front of a military helicopter laser designator.
Less missiles.
And no armament.
Yeah.
But no missiles. But no, that allows the night or day, even in inclement weather, to track multiple targets and multiple cars, and so they'll track the cars and see the speed. And so, like a trooper they'll bring together an emphasis. So 4 or 5 troopers will stage them up on an overpass somewhere off to the side, and you're going down the freeway, and you don't need marks. We used to use a stopwatch and time between markings, and so those courses were known. So and so now we can do it anywhere. So this is one of the tactics used for the street racing recently here is, the aircraft will be up and spot them, and then direct the officers to where the cars go. So you really can't get away. You can't run.
And they can see the car clearly, color, all that.
Oh yeah,
okay.
It's pretty awesome. Just I mean, like you saw the video from the wars we've been involved in. It's the exact same technology. So just as you saw,
minus the missiles.
Yeah, minus the missiles, and it's that same technology. And so we can get up to I believe it's 16 targets. I'm not positive, but in 16 different cars and targets. I probably shouldn't use that word, but I say no missiles.
Entrapment. I knew it. It's entrapment.
But it's all on video.
Yeah.
It's video recorded. You got audio, video. So I mean, if you really,
that wasn't me in my pants.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll walk them right in, and you watch the trooper. They'll direct the trooper in to stop that car, and then the next trooper will stop the next one, the next one, and the next one. As many cars as we have troopers available to stop those cars, and then we link the video from the airplane with the trooper has a video in the car, and so it merges together. So yes, that car that we saw going X miles an hour is now the car that we saw. You brought up earlier highest speed. That was we had COVID speeds where we had a lot of COVID high speed. Our speed pattern typically it's Friday afternoons rush hour, which is not necessarily speed-related collisions. Those are speed differential collisions. I mean, i.e. someone's going 0 and someone's going 40 and they don't stop in time. Versus it moved to Saturday mornings. And so we had a motorcycle we clocked at 135, I think, on I-90 coming across, or 520. It was 520. We never engaged in a pursuit or anything. It just the trooper stood on the side of the road and went by him, I think, at 135 and hit over 150, and just on the curve coming up, they did not fail to negotiate the curve. We found the bike on the shoulder and the body way off into the brush because they just had. I mean, the speed was so fast, and I don't know if the skill level. I'd never heard.
So he went by the trooper, probably freaked and thought, "I'm going to run for it."
Well, no, this motorbike had been going. They've been going all out for. Okay. It was not the speed was unchanged after going by the officer, but the aircraft had it the whole time, and that was motorcycle pursuits are very dangerous because to the motorcyclists especially. But so that's why the aircraft. I mean, the aircraft is up regularly, and so we just follow the motorcyclist home. It's great. You watch the video. You just follow the motorcyclist. He's driving home, parks it in the garage, and pulls the patrol car behind him, and you got it's infrared camera.
I wasn't on the bike. I was watching Teletubbies. Yeah.
So we can track him right down to wherever he's sitting on the front porch. What do you mean me? And so it's like, well, would you like to watch the video? So, but yeah, we rarely.
Yes.
Yeah. So
and post it to YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm guilty, but can I get a copy of this?
We have a forum which we kind of review our strategic plan. Quarterly, and so the aviation unit brings and shows those videos on a quarterly basis, the good ones, and the somewhat entertaining ones like that, and it's a great tool.
So that's going to be the next thing built into radar detectors is airplane scanners.
Well, it's light. It's just infrared. It's camera. So,
no, I'm just saying, scanning the airways, listening for radio.
Actual active radar.
Radar. Yeah, I think the plane's in the area. We should slow down. Yeah.
So it's a great tool. It keeps. I mean, you don't get involved in pursuits, and you get the ones that are definitely violating the law and being a hazard, and not just
those people.
those nicks.
No, I was just talking about people that maybe speed through Oregon or something. I don't know.
That's a great segue topic, actually. Not speeding in Oregon, which we highly don't recommend.
Yeah, don't ever speed in Oregon.
By the way, especially not around out of the city. Turns out.
I blame the car behind him.
I do too.
Yeah, me too. Yep.
So say, as many of our listeners do, and not that we ever have, if they are allegedly pulled over for allegedly going far greater than the speed limit, not to say they're doing, 155 somewhere. That would be weird.
Hypothetically.
What is what's your best course of action as the driver?
Be polite, be honest. I mean, you're going to get a ticket. I mean, most likely. I mean, there's rare exception to that, but just golden rule: do unto others as you'd have to do unto you. If that was your job, if your job was to enforce the law, and you have, the shoe was on the other foot, what would you like to? I
didn't know how fast I was going. I was reaching in the back for a beer.
Yeah, I mean, have your interior light on if it's dark out. Yeah. Be polite. I mean, don't be a jerk. I mean, it's.
Okay.
That's
a really good question. Okay, so I've always been taught you wait till the officer comes up to the car before you reach in the glove compartment, anything like that. I mean, obviously the one time I've actually been pulled over with my concealed weapon permit, I immediately said it, because I think that you're supposed to, you're required to. But if I get pulled over, should I have all my information ready, or is that going to cause undue?
It can. I mean, it's going to depend on. I mean, is it? Do you have a look at some of the cars that barely can see in the back window, or are you in a like a Prius? You can't see in the back window.
I'm in a well-tinted Subaru with maybe plates in it.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of thing. That looks like, we call it furtive movement. It's that suspicious movement. Because I mean, like one of my classmates, Tony Radulescu, was shot and killed in 2012. He's pulling up to a lifted-up truck and stopped it for speeding out on Highway 16 and walked up to the truck on the passenger side, and the girlfriend was kind of in cahoots with it, and she kind of engaged him. The driver pulled a weapon out from between the seat and shot him right in the face, shot him right in the cheek, killed him right there. And I mean, that's the worst case scenario. I mean, that's what a police officer walking up to the car is prepared. I mean, we say is treat everyone like your grandma, but have a plan to kill them, and not because you have to. That's the self-preservation. I mean, I have a wife and 8 kids. It's important for me to go home. And most people, 99.99% of people are not that, and are not that bad person. But you never know when you're going to meet them. I mean, that was just, a traffic stop. He was running. I don't think the guy would have gotten a ticket. He's high on methamphetamine. He's got methamphetamine likely in the car. He's a bad person. You kind of put yourself in that shoe. What would you do? What would you want to do? And that's where it's, you turn on your lights. Is this could this look bad? I mean, that's like you tell them you have a weapon. I mean, I always, the weapon you know about is not the one you got to worry about. That was always someone who walks up to me and says, I got a concealed weapons permit. It's right here. I mean, I was like, the fact you told me about it likely means that you're not going to use it. We're good.
Yeah.
Just leave it there, and we'll have a polite, easy conversation, and that's the end of that.
Yeah.
And concealed weapons permit. I've never had an issue with a concealed weapon. I've never even heard. Most concealed weapons permit holders are great people.
My point is, you're required to say it. Like,
right.
That's a big, yeah.
And so, I mean, they're honest, and obviously being honest and being forthright. So that gives you a sense of calm as a police officer, or it alleviates you. You go into it with you're at a 10 heightened sense of awareness, and then you kind of, as you learn more information, you step that backwards. So, I mean, if you're, I guess put yourself in their shoes. I mean, what would you? If it's dark out, turn on your light. I mean, those kind of things, those indicators. Are you giving off positive indicators that you're a responsible adult that, maybe violated an infraction, it's a civil infraction, or do you have crack in your shoes, that you borrowed from your roommate.
Those aren't my shoes.
Yeah. Or the pants that aren't yours that got crack in them.
Happens to me all the time. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yep.
But,
that's funny. Happens to you all the time.
I mean,
well, yeah, that's literally.
Who hasn't been out in somebody else's boots and somebody else's pants? I mean,
so. It's almost like the 2 beers thing we talked about before. Those aren't my pants. I mean, it's like, well, whose pants? I mean, everybody I found drugs on, it alleges that's not their pants, that's not their car, it's their friend's car, it's their friend's drugs. Everybody denies it. Nobody's, that's mine.
I grew up with a guy, went to high school with him. He actually had a not my pants story. He was having a nice night with a lady, and her husband came home, and he jumped up and put on a pair of pants and ran out of the house that were not his pants. So yeah, that was interesting. But yeah,
that's a bad story either way.
Yeah, really it is. Yeah. Here's your pants. How do you have my pants? I want to talk about it. Yeah.
What do you think about the numbers of recruitment being crazy down lately? It seems to be like they're falling through the floor.
Why don't people want to be police officers
so
right
strange.
now?
That's really
we had a summer of love and some good times.
It's like one of the bills right now out would make it you would be personally civilly liable for any force used. So if Dan in his job something breaks, now you can sue him civilly for breaking that. But the way it was originally written, he was not entitled to attorney's fees, but you were entitled to attorney's fees if you won.
So basically, if you pull somebody over and arrest them, even though they're a bad guy, and they're injured, they could sue you?
They could sue you personally, like my handcuffs are too tight. And so, I mean, we investigate every use of force. There aren't very many, and that's kind of the misconception we have thousands of arrests every year, hundreds of thousands of interactions, and uses of forces are in the hundreds. I mean, any force at all. I mean, just handcuffing. Not handcuffing is not use of force, but even a complaint of a use of force. So they're very, very low. And so you get, the legislator, this one that sponsored this bill, this is the blowback you get because it's politically popular, and that doesn't. I mean, you'd be a fool to work in those conditions. I mean, it would be financially foolish to do that, still continue to do the job. But that bill got amended slightly. It's still a bad, very bad bill, but it's still alive, going through the legislature. I mean, you look at, the drug bill with the possession law. There was a bill drafted yesterday, I believe, to amend the statute to say add the word knowingly. And I don't know if that bill's gained traction or not, but that would fix that Supreme Court ruling. So you'd have to prove knowingly, which is another problem. I mean, I could prove that you should have known that rock that you were stepping on was drugs. In the boot, but I don't know what you know. Like only you know what you know.
So and I don't want to tell you the truth. So
right,
yeah.
and it's not a. Are there bad people and bad cops? Are there jerks? Yes, but police officers hate bad cops more than anybody. And that's the. If we have people that are, we will try our best to root them out and get them fired, because that reflects badly on all of us. And there's not many. I can't.
Dan, you were telling me about the fact that and back in the day, like if you were fired from one police department, you could move across the country, go there, and there wasn't a lot of communication between to know that you were a bad cop.
There's a national database there's a national database. Every law enforcement officer in Washington State and most states are certified through a central body. For us, it's the Criminal Justice Training Institute, and they certify all police officers. If you commit a violation or even like lying, we had another classmate of mine lied about the fact that he had in a relationship with a subordinate that was inappropriate. That got him terminated and revoked his police officer certification for life. And so he can't work anywhere in the country. And that's just, it was nothing inappropriate other than he was a superior and it was an improper relationship. Yeah. But the big thing is he lied about it. Yeah. He would have gotten, it was inappropriate relationship, would have got him, some discipline, but ultimately he said, no, I didn't. And yes, you did. And so that will get you fired for life. So there's a national database that we in background would check those. We'd run those names through that database. And it really does. The problem is say like Minneapolis, they cut $8 million. Now they want to spend $6.4 to hire someone. Who in their right mind is going to go work for them? So you have the guy who, barely passes as a security guard, but really has this ego complex, wants to be a police officer, and he's the only one left applying.
And he's probably fast-tracked because they need people.
Yeah, and so the problem is you this cycle of essentially lack of, basically calling evil good and good evil, creates problems. It's Minneapolis and Seattle. It's a downhill spiral. Why would you work here when no one's? If your boss basically tells you you're wrong, and you can't do your job, and you start off this with I think the military to some extent even is, you start off with an idealistic standpoint. You want to make a difference. You want to be there. That was the accident reconstruction. It was passionate about how do I change things so that pain doesn't happen to someone else. How do we educate? How do we make it a difference so that bad things don't happen to people, to good people? And we put bad people. That's why you arrest DUIs. You want to get people who are making, likely to cause death and destruction on the roadway off the road. And so if you're told you can't make arrests, you can't put bad people in jail, you can't put thieves and crooks in jail anymore because it hurts their feelings. It's pretty discouraging if you can't do your job. The good people who want to do the job really don't want to do the job, and so you end up with some. We would see these in background of folks that were rejected or just marginally. It's like this isn't if you got a Crown Victoria you've bought on auction and you fixed that up and that's your personal car, that is known as a red flag. We're not going to hire you. No one's going to hire you. This is wannabe.
But I come with my own car.
Yeah,
and I've got some furry handcuffs.
Yeah, I'm a security guard. I got a retired Crown Victoria and it has yellow lights.
That Quickie Mart's never been safer.
Yeah, we're not going to hire you. Yeah, we don't want power hungry people. We don't want that at all. And so when I got hired, there were 700 applicants for every person hired. Now there's 30.
Wow.
So, I mean, to see that change, I mean, societal's change, but ultimately, if you have somebody that says, do I want to do that job or do I want to do that job? You want you have to have good people, good moral, ethical people to be police officers. You get a lot of power, and that has to be a job that's very highly scrutinized. Do the background checks, we investigate literally every alleged use of force all the way as if it was a murder. We track that down just because we have to make sure that we did it right. And I mean, murder is a strong word, but we investigate every claim because we want to make sure that we don't have someone out there doing bad things. I mean, it does happen. But we do everything we can to attempt to make that not happen. And so when you have someone who's starting off who's maybe a little bit, this probably isn't the best one, but we got to have a body. We need people. And I mean, that in any hire, anybody who has a job, anybody who's an employer, you don't want the guy who just wants to be there. You want a guy who's passionate about it and who's the right fit for it. And so it gets harder and harder to people who are the right fit and are passionate about it. You end up with either lack of work or just bad people who are going to take advantage of it.
Well, and like you said, they're not allowed to do their job. I mean, downtown Seattle is a perfect example. There are places where you can stand across a corner and look at a cop and do drugs, and there's no consequences. So.
No, and that's that's by design of the city leadership, the prosecutor. I mean, they truly think that's okay. But I mean, the rest of the citizens, I mean, you have to stand up and say no. I mean, it's not okay for you to allow this small minority to harm us, to be uncivilized. And to behave in an uncivilized manner that hurts the rest of society. We let this little tiny minority, loud, obvious minority. I mean, you're not loving these homeless people. I mean, I look at my foster care experience. These mothers and fathers' stories are heartbreaking. I mean, my kids' mom was effectively homeless at 12. She was doing drugs at that time. She was been prostituted. She's had everything. I mean, she has been abused, and it makes you cry. You want to give her a hug, but she has been offered, services. We've tried to get her engaged in things. And she chooses not to, and yet, she keeps damaging more and more children. And damaging more and more people and the people she touches. But ultimately, again, she had some really bad cards dealt to her, and no one taught her how to play it. But she's an adult now, and if the longer we enable her to make bad choices that destroy her life, and destroy the lives around her, that's not loving her. That's hating her. That's cruel to her. And yet, we in Washington society encourage her destruction. And people like her who didn't know any better. We fund it to the tune, I think, about $100,000 a year to every homeless person. We hate them.
Somebody should be held liable for that.
Somebody has to love them enough to say that's not okay.
Yeah.
There's a better way. I mean, the housing's it's the help's there, but they don't want it because they want to do their thing, and it's not only destroying the lives around them, but it destroys their own life. And that's not.
Yeah.
So.
Let's move it back to the cars a little bit.
Something happy.
Let's go to something happier.
Yeah.
But
I would love to hear
let's talk about killing kittens. Yes.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, sorry. What about a fun? Tell me about one of your fun chase stories that ended well. Do you have any fun ones of those?
Chases aren't fun. They're
like when you chased your wife.
Okay, no,
it's
not
love
this,
story
not for this show.
No.
Okay. No.
Well, how about a high-speed run in Germany? I know about.
Oh yeah.
Where that was perfectly legal and acceptable and safe.
Yes. So yeah, we Governor Gregoire was a car person, which is I never would have thought that. And I very early on in her, I was driving once, and she was talking about how she had an MG convertible. And when she got married, and she and her husband were in the car, and she said, well, they had to sell it to get a family car. And so I was, they didn't have cool cars. They had a Jimmy. And so it was like, what possibly could they have gotten that led them to this nasty Jimmy? And she goes, yeah, we had to sell it, but, I still wanted a convertible. So it's a 69 Chevelle SS396 4-speed. And I'm like,
You're like,
I'm
what?
like almost like stopped. I'm like, that was your idea of a family car? I mean, like, I have a whole new respect for you. That's awesome. And but I wanted a convertible. I wanted a manual. I'm like, wow. So, but the BMW built a carbon fiber factory over in Moses Lake. And they invited the governor over to kind of look at where this carbon fiber was going as part of the electric car. That's part of the I-3.
Oh, over to Germany.
Over to Germany.
Yeah.
And so we flew over to Germany, and they provided us with a 760M model and two 750Ms, and then a German liaison to help drive us around. And we did this loop of Germany, basically, starting in Munich at the BMW factory and BMW museum, which was so cool.
It's incredible, yeah.
But I had flown in with the governor, and we got to that first night at the hotel. We sat down and we, and mapped out everything where we were going, times. There's a lot of planning that goes into it, and I'm checking the routes and kind of rechecking their math. And I'm like, you have us moving between locations at 200 kilometers an hour average, with fuel and stops. And he's like, no problem. And I'm like, my two guys that are with me, like, they're like grinning, and they're like, no problem.
Yeah.
Because they had done this
We
loop
can do
before.
this.
And so I'm like, this is going to be fun. But, so I got the 760 with that 6-liter V12. Yeah. And I got out on the gentleman, he says, now, you'll see a beep at 240. And that's the warning for the winter. It has winter tires, because this was in October. And he goes, it's not, as long as it's not more than like 20 minutes, you're fine, but we shouldn't be over 240.
Well, the guy from BMW said.
Yeah. Sure. And so we are flying down the Autobahn, and sure enough, it's beeping. And she's like, Dave, what's that beeping noise? And I said, well, that's the high-speed indicator. That's the high-speed warning. But he said it was no big deal. And just as long as we didn't sustain the speeds. But, 200 was not at all a problem. I mean, the lane
200 kilometers
200 kilometers an hour. Yeah.
The governor was moving.
I saw touched 300 once, and then we got back down again. We were trying to catch up to the gentleman in the BMW, our lead, because I had gotten stuck behind a car, and I'm trying to catch up to him. But we that was fun, and it was like. And the car person and her came out. It's like the efficiency at which they move, the skill at which the drivers have over there. I mean, he had probably as much time on a course in driver's training as I did, and that was just his basic driver's license plus a little bit extra with BMW, and that was fun. But that was we easily averaged. We were early, but the only downside was paying $7 a gallon or $7 a liter for fuel at some of these stops. But we quickly filled them up and went on to the next one. But that was a blast. But we got to see the i3 before it went into production.
Oh, cool.
It was BMW. What they showed us their carbon fiber bumper cores and the M3s, the roofs in the M3 and the hoods were coming out at that time. And so it's a neat partnership that BMW has over now. I think it's SGL that owns that plant over in Moses Lake. They still produce. They do the carbon weaving there, and they make the carbon fiber thread there. Then they ship it over to Germany and weave it. And
a lot of carbon fiber being made here with the lab with Boeing and all that.
Lamborghini and Callaway golf clubs, forged carbon, all that stuff is all development here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that was I got to know the fastest thanks to her, because right at the end of her term, the NHRA invited her to come out to experience NHRA out at the Pacific Raceways. And so they had a funny car there and a enclosed car. But anyway, they both had 572 blown 572s, and they were two-seaters. Oh, and so fun. They took her down the track, and then she gets back, and I'm looking at it, and it was right at shift change. So we had someone else come over, and she's like, do you want to do it, Dave? And I'm like, yeah. And so she's like, well, would you mind? And so she took off with the other shift that was taken over. So I'm like, yeah, I want to do it. So I did it. I think we did 159, I think.
Wow. I
think it was 159. It was like a 7-second quarter mile.
That's fast.
It was violent.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I remember they strapped wrist Velcro, it's like belt they strap around your wrist. There's this heavy duty Velcro that straps to this like made up steering wheel. And he says, he said, those need to be tight, because if we roll, your arms are getting ripped right off if they're not on there.
Good.
And so,
good to know.
Yeah, it was, put your head back or it'll knock you out. That was a violent launch. And that's like, we got to sit in the one of the funny cars that was racing, 3-second, 300-mile-an-hour quarter miles. That just are
So insane watching those.
just insane. So, but yeah, it was that was a pretty cool. Yeah, she was a pretty cool governor. So
Interesting.
so
Good times. Well, it's about that time.
Nap time?
Yeah, no, we should
No,
talk
okay.
about our Avance stuff coming up.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And get to some of the good stuff from Avance. There's only one big event coming up, but it's coming up with our other sponsor, Griot's Garage, official car care provider of Rain City Supercars. It's the Avance launch party. They're doing a magazine launch party on the 12th and the 13th this month down at Griot's Garage in Tacoma. And everybody should go check that out, Avance member or not, because that showroom at Griot's is amazing.
And constantly changing.
And constantly changing.
Yeah.
There's a gorgeous Senna in there. There's a 65 LT, the Lincoln, the M3 Avant.
Avant, and then the that Lamborghini, what is it?
It's a 4,000?
Yeah, 4,000
GT. I mean, it's always changing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Griot's Motors is down there. But you guys should go check that out. RCS 10 for 10% off at Griot's Garage. I think you still have your Creeper, right?
yes, I just put new wheels on my Creeper. I bought that I think in high school. I got that.
Yeah, so that was like early 90s?
Yeah, I think 89 or 90.
89 or 90. You graduated 89, right?
90.
Yeah.
Watching you both look at each other and squint to try to figure out when that date was.
We've both used that a lot.
I know.
Yeah,
it's like,
that has been.
That Creeper has gotten more use than any other tool, period.
And the vinyl's still in good shape. Just the wheels had finally I think oil and whatnot had just degraded the plastic of the wheels. So
it happens after 35
Yeah,
years
yeah.
or whatever.
Right,
So, yeah.
exactly.
So
was it?
I can't remember. I remember when you got it.
Was it the
but-
Porsche? Was it when I was redoing the
I don't
Porsche?
need to be here.
Yeah, maybe when you were doing the 914, I think.
It's a Dave and Dan show now.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So yeah, I think might have been the Porsche. But
If I
yeah,
have to
it
be
was
replaced, he's a good. Yeah.
Did Jeff painted that, didn't he? The Porsche? Or
No, that
No.
was
I'm trying to think. All the people we've interacted with doing car
no, the
stuff
guy,
over
the
the
kid
years.
that painted that was like he painted it in his parents' garage.
Yeah.
He's now a hot rod builder up in Snohomish.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah,
where the
yeah,
connection
yeah,
was. Yeah.
yeah.
It's always a small world up there, though. Like all the North End car guys all know each other all the
I
time.
remember his name. I knew his sister. I met his sister in college, and we were friends. And he said, "Oh, his brother paints cars," and so I was on a budget, so
It turned out great, though.
Yeah, it turned out really well.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, I missed that car.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay. It's fun to watch you two reminisce. Yeah. So,
Oh, it's a lot of good times with cars.
yeah. You should have never taught him to climb a bookshelf. That was the problem.
yeah, I think that was instinctive.
Yeah.
It's that monkey thing.
It is that monkey thing. Yeah, exactly. Oh, wait. I'm Dan's monkey. I get it. That's fair. That's fair. Well, we've been looking forward to this for a long time. I really appreciate you coming in. Now I hear you're running for the hills.
Yes, we leave for Arkansas tomorrow morning. Another road trip in a cool car. No,
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Hey, we upgraded this time.
Yeah, we
Two
did
brothers in a
upgrade, yeah.
van. Where could that go
Yeah.
wrong?
We went from the minivan, though, to the 15-passenger van
Yeah,
with
the-
a trailer.
the cool-
This one will do
cool.
the speed limit.
Oh, okay.
yeah, and
That's
actually,
nice.
the van, the minivan really did not like pulling that little trailer. And we were getting like 12 miles per gallon with that minivan because it would never shift into overdrive. But the big van, it's got the 6-liter
Yeah.
V8 in it, and that thing pulls. I weighed it with the scales. It weighs like 12,000 pounds with everything on it, and it's still getting 14 miles per gallon, which isn't that much worse than just normal. So
Yeah, it gets Raptor mileage now.
Well, I mean, drive safe. Thank you for everything you did up here. We'll miss you, but I'm sure we'll see you again. And for this episode of Rain City Supercars, I'm Nick.
I'm Dan, and don't just get there. Enjoy the drive.